In late 2021, the digital media company Buzzfeed went public by merging with a SPAC. The company, which was once valued at over $1 billion, has been a complete failure on the public markets. Since going public, its share price has fallen by more than 90%, putting it within striking distance of penny stock status. The company is burning cash. They also have $100 million of debt coming due this December, which they don't have the cash on hand to repay. In May of 2024, the former pharmaceutical entrepreneur and Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy purchased an 8% stake in the company. He plans to run an activist campaign to change the company's direction. According to Vivek, BuzzFeed's main problem is its woke ideology. He criticizes the company for its left-wing political views and history of publishing false information. Despite Vivek becoming the company's second-largest shareholder, BuzzFeed largely ignored him and continued to operate business as usual. But recently, pressure has grown as it now looks like Vivek isn't the only one unhappy with the company's current direction. On July 16th, the billionaire family behind the Pult home building company also acquired an activist stake in BuzzFeed. They support the changes proposed by Vivek Ramaswamy. In this video, we'll look at the root causes behind BuzzFeed's financial troubles and whether Vivek's turnaround plan has any chance of success. This video is brought to you by Differentiated-Analytics, a website that we created which provides premium short-selling research. We conduct extensive research to identify companies which we believe are either fraudulent, overvalued, or operating unviable business models. We then write professional-grade short-selling reports, explaining our reasoning as to why we're bearish on the stock. We've been publishing these short reports since January of this year. So far, we've published 11 reports, of which 10 of the stocks have declined in value since then, one of them by more than 70%. On average, our short picks have massively underperformed the S&P 500. If you're interested in short-selling stocks, make sure to check out Differentiated Analytics, link in the description below. For a limited time, you can lock in a 50% discount when you use the code WSM50. This brings the price down to just $10 per month. That's differentiatedanalytics.com. And now back to the video. BuzzFeed was founded by a former high school teacher named Jonah Peretti in 2006. It started off as a website which posted stories about news events, pop culture, etc. The BuzzFeed articles would also contain links to third-party articles and online resources. They kind of acted like an aggregator for interesting articles on the internet, while also adding their own commentary. Eventually, they graduated beyond being a site aggregator. They hired full-time writers who write articles mostly about pop culture, celebrities, memes, and social commentary. To get a sense of what type of content BuzzFeed produces, let's take a look at some of their headlines. This girl matched on Tinder with an Olympic athlete, and here's what happened next. 10 signs that your cat is a wizard, and the best condom ads from around the world. One of the most recognizable aspects of BuzzFeed are their online quizzes. They have online quizzes where you answer questions, and then they'll tell you something about yourself. These quizzes are completely unscientific and mostly just clickbait. You can see that BuzzFeed primarily focuses on low-quality content that is primarily designed to garner clicks. If you read BuzzFeed articles and take their quizzes, you're probably not going to learn anything useful. It's just a way to mindlessly waste time. The content BuzzFeed produces can most accurately be described as digital trash. Back when BuzzFeed started, the internet was in its infancy. There wasn't nearly as much online content as there is today, meaning there is less competition for clicks and eyeballs. By churning out massive quantities of low-quality content, BuzzFeed quickly became one of the most popular websites on the internet. With their reader base exploding, BuzzFeed was able to raise money from venture capitalists and expand aggressively. They hired hundreds of new full-time writers who could pump out thousands of new articles per week. As YouTube started to gain popularity, BuzzFeed decided to expand into producing video content. In or around 2012, they created their first YouTube channel called BuzzFeed Video. In the beginning, they made low-budget videos that were basically just compilations of internet memes. This was the early days of YouTube, and competition for views was sparse. So despite the videos being objectively low quality, they got millions upon millions of views. Over time, they started creating higher budget and higher effort videos, some of which were very successful. Some of their most popular videos include If Disney Princesses Were Real, $1 Street Food Around the World, and A Day in the Life of a Porn Star. Their top videos have tens of millions of views. With the success of BuzzFeed Video, the company doubled down on its YouTube strategy. In addition to their main BuzzFeed Video channel, they created new channels including Tasty, a channel about food, and As Is, a channel about beauty and fashion. As Is was originally called BuzzFeed Yellow, but changed its name to Boldly in 2017. They changed the name again to As Is just 1 year later in 2018. BuzzFeed Multiplayer is all about video games. And finally, they own First We Feast, a channel where celebrities answer questions while eating spicy chicken wings. They also have a few other channels that have either been discontinued or are too small to matter. The final venture that's worth mentioning is Buzzfeed News. This is a digital-only news website. They hired journalists all over the world and did investigative reporting. At its peak, Buzzfeed had well over 1,000 full-time employees, many of whom were based at the company's headquarters in New York. These included staff writers, editors, video producers, as well as corporate administrative staff. Because Buzzfeed relies primarily on full-time employees as opposed to freelancers, their costs are largely fixed in the short term. All of Buzzfeed's content is available for free, so their only revenue source is advertising. They put display ads on their website, and YouTube pays them for every view they get on their YouTube channels. They also have brand sponsors. Brands can pay Buzzfeed to place and promote their products on Buzzfeed's videos. Buzzfeed's business model is a risky one. Their costs are largely fixed, while their ad revenue can vary greatly based on how many views and clicks they generate. By the early 2010s, things seem to be going pretty well. In 2013, founder and CEO Jonah Peretti claimed that the company was profitable. This apparent success allowed them to raise more money from venture capitalists and accelerate their expansion. But as we will see, Buzzfeed's success would prove short-lived. In or around 2016, Buzzfeed started becoming politically controversial. Instead of just talking about cat videos or internet memes, as they had in the past, they started making videos about hot-button social issues like racism and feminism. One of their most memorable videos was titled 36 Questions Women Have for Men, released in 2016. Each question was a thinly veiled criticism against men, mostly using straw man arguments and inconsistent logic. The audience reaction was extremely negative. The video quickly became something of a meme, with dozens of large YouTubers making parodies and reaction videos. BuzzFeed quickly gained the reputation as being one of the most militantly left-wing publications in the world. Many people assumed that BuzzFeed's employees were a bunch of left-wing activists using their platform to spread their ideology. While this may have some truth to it, it likely isn't the main driver behind their controversial content. In the early days, there was so little competition on YouTube that BuzzFeed could get millions of views just by posting cat videos and meme compilations. There was no need to delve into controversial topics. As the internet matured, competition for views intensified. The company was also growing its cost base. They opened up a new office in LA and hired hundreds of new full-time employees. To pay for all this, they needed to massively increase their view count. BuzzFeed established a high-pressure work environment where employees were given view quotas they were expected to fulfill. Employees who failed their quotas risked termination. One way BuzzFeed's video producers would meet their quotas is by creating videos they knew would be lightning rods. It doesn't matter if you get a 90% dislike ratio or how savage the comments are. A hate view is still a view. BuzzFeed's pathetic desperation for views is best exemplified by a video they released in January of 2016, where they had their employees consume their own urine. This was a new low for BuzzFeed. The video was so disgusting and received so much backlash that they deleted it from their YouTube channel. But to this day, they still have an article about it on their website, with GIFs of their employees drinking their own urine. The BuzzFeed News division was also controversial. In 2017, they published what they claimed to be an intelligence report showing deep ties behind Donald Trump and Russia. The report was later debunked, causing huge embarrassment to the media outlets that covered it. To be fair to BuzzFeed, they said the allegations are unverified and the report contained errors. But if you know the report contains errors, why publish it at all? This fiasco further led to the perception that BuzzFeed is an unreliable news source that will do anything for clicks and views. While BuzzFeed's controversial and over-the-top videos succeeded in garnering a lot of rage views in the short term, their appeal quickly wore off. According to Google Trends data, their YouTube search interest peaked in 2015 and has been on a downward trajectory ever since. Their main BuzzFeed video channel got about 8 million views per week in 2021. By 2024, this had fallen to less than 2 million. We only have views data going back to 2021. It was likely much higher back in 2015. Viewership has probably declined by more than 90% since the peak. Today, many of their videos struggle to cross the 10,000 view mark within a month of upload. This is pretty paltry for a channel that has almost 20 million subscribers. Back in the day, BuzzFeed indeed had a number of popular video series across their various YouTube channels. The problem was, the popularity of these videos were heavily dependent on the individual BuzzFeed employees who produced and starred in them. Eventually, these BuzzFeed employees realized they could just quit their jobs and make a living from their own YouTube channels. When they did so, they often took their fan bases with them. On YouTube, you can find dozens of YouTube videos of former BuzzFeed employees explaining why they quit. As one example, a woman named Safiya Nygaard starred on BuzzFeed's Ladylike series hosted on their As Is channel. In 2017, she quit Buzzfeed to focus on her own YouTube channel. Today, Sophia Nygaard gets about 1.8 million views per week on her own channel. This is almost 4 times greater than the number of views the entire As Is channel gets. And Sophia Nygaard was just one of dozens of people working on the As Is channel. Buzzfeed recruits creative people interested in video production. These are the same types of people who would be interested in making their own YouTube channel. It's no surprise that once they gain expertise and exposure at Buzzfeed, they often leave, taking their fans with them. If you look at the type of videos that Buzzfeed produces, they don't have crazy expensive film sets or special effects. An individual creator with enough talent and experience can absolutely make videos on their own of at least the same quality. So there's really no reason to stay at Buzzfeed. In late 2021, Buzzfeed went public by merging with a SPAC. In conjunction with the SPAC, Buzzfeed also borrowed $200 million to fund its acquisition of rival digital media company Complex Networks. Complex Networks also owned the popular YouTube program First We Feast. The total acquisition price was $300 million, with the remaining $100 million being paid in stock. Buzzfeed perhaps believed that the acquisition would give them economies of scale, thereby allowing them to achieve profitability. Unfortunately, they were wrong. Despite making a major acquisition, Buzzfeed's revenue continued to plunge. In 2022 and 2023, they did multiple rounds of layoffs, ultimately terminating more than a quarter of their staff. They also shut down their failing news division, which cost a lot of money while garnering little viewership. Despite the cost cuts, revenue was declining so fast that they continued to lose money. By 2024, things were getting desperate. The $200 million they borrowed to buy Complex was coming due at the end of the year, and they didn't have the cash on hand to repay it. So in February, they sold Complex to a consortium of investors for $109 million. This is about 1/3 of what they bought it for back in 2021. The sale did not include the First We Feast YouTube channel, which Buzzfeed retained. This brings us to the situation we find today. Buzzfeed's viewership numbers continue to decline. They are running out of cash and are being forced to sell off their assets at massive losses. Based on the current trajectory, the company appears headed towards bankruptcy. In May of 2024, the former pharmaceutical entrepreneur and Republican presidential candidate Vivek Ramaswamy purchased 8% of Buzzfeed's shares and sent an open letter to the company's board of directors demanding changes. In the letter, he provides 3 main ideas on how to improve the company's performance. Firstly, he suggests they lay off even more staff to cut costs. Secondly, they should focus on audio and video content. He's presumably referring to YouTube. And finally, Buzzfeed should admit their past journalistic failures and redefine Buzzfeed's brand around the pursuit of truth. Specifically, Vivek points to the success of First We Feast, which Buzzfeed acquired in 2021. Across its various YouTube channels, Buzzfeed has over 60 million subscribers. The problem is they don't have high-quality content to upload to these channels. So what's Vivek's solution to this? He suggests they hire high-profile internet personalities such as Candace Owens, Destiny, and Tucker Carlson to host shows on Buzzfeed. Vivek proposes that they offer these internet personalities low base salaries, with the potential for unlimited performance-based compensation. This will supposedly entice them to join Buzzfeed. By making these suggestions, Vivek exposes his complete ignorance of how the media industry and YouTube work. Vivek talks about the fact that Buzzfeed has tens of millions of YouTube subscribers. While this is true, it's important to remember that they've accumulated these subscribers over the course of more than 10 years. Currently, their main Buzzfeed video channel is almost dead, with recent videos struggling to get even a few thousand views. Most of Buzzfeed's subscribers are clearly no longer active. They subscribed to Buzzfeed many years ago and lost interest and stopped watching the videos. Because of this, the YouTube algorithm stops recommending them new Buzzfeed videos to watch. If you look at your own subscription list, you're probably subscribed to dozens of channels you haven't watched in years. Having a large number of inactive subscribers doesn't do you any good. Vivek's suggestion of hiring popular right-wing influencers is laughably dumb. Let's take the example of his first suggestion, Candace Owens. Candace Owens has her own YouTube channel with over 2 million subscribers. She already gets hundreds of thousands of views per video, and likely makes tens if not hundreds of thousands of dollars per month. On her own, she already gets way more views per video than any of Buzzfeed's channels. Somebody like Candace Owens would get zero benefit from joining Buzzfeed. What little remains of Buzzfeed's audience would likely have no interest in watching her. Her own audience would be confused as to why she would join Buzzfeed. Vivek points to the success of First We Feast, which Buzzfeed acquired back in 2021. It's a YouTube show where they invite various celebrities who answer questions while eating spicy chicken wings. The show is indeed very successful, with many of their videos getting well over 1 million views. They also generate a lot of revenue by selling branded hot sauce. First We Feast reportedly generates $30 million of annual revenue. It's also one of the few profitable franchises owned by Buzzfeed. Despite this, Buzzfeed has failed to sell the show for an asking price of $70 million. The show's host, Sean Evans, has no long-term contract with Buzzfeed, and is free to quit pretty much whenever he wants. There's nothing stopping him from leaving and starting his own YouTube channel, taking his fans and celebrity connections with him. This key man risk is likely why nobody wants to buy the channel. This is the problem with Buzzfeed. They don't really have any competitive advantage, and are largely dependent on the internet personas of their employees. Vivek then goes on to complain about the alleged misinformation published by BuzzFeed News over the years. Vivek says that BuzzFeed should apologize for their misinformation and commit to higher journalistic standards in the future. Just by reading Vivek's letter, it's unclear whether or not he knows that BuzzFeed News no longer exists. It was shut down last year. Vivek's letter to BuzzFeed's board is an embarrassing testament to his ignorance. He clearly doesn't understand the fundamental challenges facing BuzzFeed. He instead relies on a go woke, go broke heuristic, and thinks that by hiring some right-wing influencers, he can magically solve the company's problems. BuzzFeed's entire business model doesn't really make sense anymore. A corporation like BuzzFeed has massive overhead expenses. They have a CEO, a CFO, an HR department, a general counsel, and office space in New York and LA. Ad-supported platforms like YouTube simply don't generate enough revenue to pay for these massive costs. Anybody with a camera and a microphone can become a content creator with almost no cost other than their time. This has created an extremely competitive environment. In 2023, BuzzFeed generated $252 million of revenue. Their cost of revenue was $142 million. This includes all of their content production costs, including salaries of employees directly involved in producing content. So they made $110 million of gross profit. They also had $150 million of corporate overhead, so they reported an operating loss of $40 million. BuzzFeed spends more on corporate overhead than they spend on actually creating content, which is pretty crazy. And this corporate overhead isn't even adding any value to the end product. We know this because many of BuzzFeed's employees end up getting more views and generating more revenue for themselves once they start working on their own. If anything, the corporate bureaucracy probably gets in the way and stifles the creative employees. When BuzzFeed was founded back in 2006, it was indeed an innovative company. The idea of aggregating, creating, and sharing viral memes across the internet worked well back in the day. Almost 20 years later, the internet has matured considerably. People now have better options than to consume BuzzFeed's mass-produced garbage. Alright guys, that wraps it up for this video. What do you think about BuzzFeed? Let us know in the comments section below. As always, thank you so much for watching and we'll see you in the next one. Wall Street Millennial, signing out.